One of my favorite speakers and authors is Brene Brown, and she deals with the subject of vulnerability and shame. I know I carry a lot of guilt and a lot of shame since I can remember, and that's going to be the topic of this second video in the series on letting go of guilt and shame. Some of my earliest memories are filled with shame, just not being as ashamed of being not as smart as my sister, who didn't have to try very hard in school. The shame of not being a boy, because the boys were favored in the family. They had an easier life. They were out on the farm with Dad, and he was a nicer version, and the girls were in the house with Mom, and it was a very tough upbringing in that home. And one of my shame stories has to do with when I stole $15. Now, this story kind of starts around the age of 12. Now, I used to go over to my cousin's place. They lived 4 miles away. I would walk over. I would ride with my cousins. They were my best friends. I would ride their horses, and I always wanted, and I would bring it up to Dad if we could get a horse, because we had cattle, we had 3/4, we were chasing cows in to milk from far away on foot. It would have been easier to have horses, and well, I just would have liked them. And at first he said, sure. That was about the age of 12. And so the next year came around, and so I brought up the topic again, and he said, yes, but the only issue is a money thing, right? And so in my 13-year-old head, money was the solving of this. So I talked to my cousins, and I did everything I could to save money, right? Pop cans, whatnots. Even the cousins would give me their pop cans just to make money. And of course I'm 13, and any adult knows that there's no way you can bring in that kind of income. But I was young and I was naive. I remember picking grass, making mounds of grass to get food up for this horse, right? And I would put the little monies I had in an envelope in the bathroom. Now, I didn't realize that Mom and Dad were watching my envelope. And one day, I saw Dad's wallet in the bathroom as well. And so I swapped out a 5 for a 20, put the 5 in his wallet, put the 20 in the envelope. Well, they spotted it, and they hauled me in front of the parent tribunal. And of course, I stole. It was theft. And so Dad at that point said we were never going to get horses. Well, that would have been nice to know 2 years previous that this was just a no-go ever. But I had hope, and so these are the things that I thought I would try. So then, because I stole the $15, I received the belting of my life. Mom hit me with the belt until her arm got too tired, and then she passed the belt over to Dad to continue hitting me with that belt for, I don't even remember how long it was. It was just the most awful thing. And I think about this when I'm out with Annie. Hey, Annie. Aw, I love you too. She's a sweetheart. I better go get her some treats. I mean, I'm 60 years old now. That the dream of having a horse never did die. So bringing Annie home was more than just bringing home a horse. It put to bed all that other history that I had, the shame of the stealing and the mess of it. And the harder part was in my third marriage, about 16 years ago, there was a family reunion at a restaurant in town, and husband and I were sitting across from my parents at this restaurant, and a kind of pervy uncle from way down a few tables over shouts across everybody and goes, "Hey Annette, were you ever spanked?" I thought that was the most ridiculous question ever to be doing in public, but I thought I ended it well by saying, weren't all kids spanked when we were little? I thought that was a perfect answer. Not so. Dad stood up and he looked at me and said that Mommy never hit you, and I only hit you once. And you could have seen my jaw would have hit the ground. My siblings, they never said a word. We all know the truth of what was going on there. As the eldest daughter in that household, I was like the model that broke every area that they were raising me to be, because, well, first girl, and we had harsher rules on the girls, as often that happened back then. And I was getting belted a lot. I was belted for having a piece of lint on the floor. I was hit in the head because, Annette, did you vacuum the floor? Yes, I vacuumed the floor, because I did. Well, that you pull back the curtain, there'd be a lint on the floor, and I would get hit. And then she would ask me again, did you vacuum the floor? And I didn't lie. I said, yes, I did. And she'd whack me upside the head. So being hit, being belted was a frequent thing in our household. Now, my next younger sister was belted as well, but just not as much. My oldest brother, he did get it a lot. Youngest brother, he kind of skated through. He still does his whole life. And the littlest sister, the one who is the birth mother of Jasmine that we have now, I think she got hit once. So things did change over time, but I was the initial model, and the way I was treated was very, very different as you went down the 5 siblings. And so to hear Dad lie in front of everybody when he didn't need to, he could have just shut up. I thought my answer of wasn't every kid received a spanking growing up back then in the 70s. I thought that was a fine answer. Nobody would have blinked, but he had to make it a thing, and it was just the oddest. He must have known what was going on was wrong for him to do that. Mom just sat there with her mouth pursed and wouldn't say a word. And yeah, I'll never forget that. But yeah, looking at Annie, she means a whole lot more. There's a whole lot more around having her in my life than just having a horse finally at 60. There's a whole lot of back feeling and all that. As I grew older, my feelings of shame did not go away. And a lot had to do with the religion that I was being raised in, the Pentecostal church, and very strict, very punitive. Every time I was in trouble, the Bible would come whipping out, and verse would come flying at me from out of it, telling me how terrible I was, and I was getting worse every year. And I remember one of the issues was, now I'd never had a boyfriend in my life, and this is when I was 12. The bus routes changed. We were country kids. The bus routes changed, and we had to move from the country Crestemere into the town of Rimbey. And all my friends were back in Crestemere, and I was just heartbroken. Now I went to school. The bus driver's son was in my class. And so I wrote a letter to Danny just begging him to talk to his dad so that he could fix the issue, because I'm naive. That's not how things work, but what did I know at the age of 12 years old? So begged Danny to talk to his dad, and when I ended the letter, I put, I love you, Annette. Well, that letter got found, and it was read out to the family, all my siblings at the breakfast table, and then Mom told me to put it in the garbage. So I put it in the garbage, but I also, when she wasn't looking, I rescued it, went to the burning barrel, and lit it on fire because I knew it was coming. Sure enough, when I got home from school, she told me to go into the garbage and dig that letter out. And of course, I'm making a big show of digging at it, right? Well, she must have known that I got rid of it. Of course, I got a belting for that. And I got called a whore then. Whore with a German accent. You can only just try to say it with the guttural R. And that being labeled a whore at that age, it always stuck in my head. And I could never shake that label, that shame. I don't know, I was 12, but I felt such shame. Now, Dad's cousin was allowed to come over and grope us girls. Mom's brother was allowed to come along, and they would do a game called Kisses for Quarters, where us girls would sit on these men's laps and kiss them for quarters. Now, I was too shy, and my sister made a lot of money, and then I'm getting called a whore, and I'm thinking, well, aren't you kind of pimping us out? I didn't say that out loud because, well, that would have gotten me into a lot of trouble. But that's the odd history that we had growing up. But that whore thing kind of stuck with me. And sure enough, by the time I was 17, I made come true what I was being labeled as. One of my largest areas of shame and guilt was my motherhood and parenting. Now, at 17, I started dating a boy I met in a youth group. He's the first boyfriend I ever had. He's the first person in my life who ever told me that he loved me. My parents didn't do that, but he did. And, well, I would do anything to keep love. And I got pregnant. So I was pregnant for my high school graduation. We eloped. I had Patrice when I was 18. And my gosh, I look at pictures of myself and I look like such a child. And what did I know of being a mom? I did not have a good mom role model at all anywhere. So I was just winging it as I went along in desperation, being feared. And well, I was a kid too, raising a child. We had a second child 2 years later because if nothing else, I was going to have the father of my kids be the same father. I made sure of that anyway. And when he wanted to give those kids up for adoption at about 5 and 3, that's when I finally left him because he was an alcoholic. He was angry. He felt trapped. We let's see here. We had gone to our pastor, or the youth pastor of our youth group, because, well, we were kids, so that's where we met. And he was Stockwell Day, and back then he was a youth leader. Later on he became something in the government of Canada, but at that point he's the youth leader, and he told us to get married. Now, we had broke up just before I found out I was pregnant, but he told us to get married, and we got married. And so you've got an angry man who's alcoholic. He's 4 years older than he was 4 years older than me. He had already had a child at 16 that he gave up for adoption after 6 months. And yeah, he felt trapped, and he treated me like that. He was physically abusive. He said the most terrible things to me, and the church did not help. They did not care that I was being physically abused. Because we did go to the pastor, and yeah, I received no support at all. And when the child's father said that he wanted to give the kids up for adoption, that's when I finally thought, this is crazy. I'm putting up with all the shame and guilt from my family, from people around me, and here he wants to give these kids up for adoption that I loved. No, I left, and it was my ex's father that helped us so much. He kept me in old cars. He was a realtor in Red Deer, so he helped find us a sixplex for me and the kids to stay in. It was close to the college. That's when I went to college. I put myself through nursing with the help of my friend Lynn, and there's that history. But growing up watching those kids, they didn't have a good upbringing with me. I mean, I was in college. I was working. I was dating. I was 23 years old. And eventually I met and married my second husband, who was nice at the start, and aren't they always? But he turned out to be just a terribly mean man. I helped finance an auto body shop for him because that was his dream. And when that sewered, because we had gotten it in July and we did not have a winter till January, and we lost everything, he became angry at everybody, angry at my kids, angry at me. And I know that my daughter, that was part of the reason why she wanted to go live with her dad for a couple of years, and I lost contact with her for 2 years because when I had the custody, I even pushed for visitation, and he would not arrive. The kids would be waiting in their coats at the window, and he just wouldn't show up because, don't you know, he had a date or he had something to do, or he'd pick them up and bring them back an hour later because he couldn't handle it. Well, when he had custody, he would not allow visitation at all for 2 years. And that was just a heartbreaking time for me in there, but the guilt inside of me, she finally came back at 14. My husband, we called him Storm and Norman. He was mean. He was just mean as a snake then, and he'd say terrible things to her, and I would fight with him in private. Now that was one of the mistakes I made, and it was thrown up at me by her just fairly recently. It did not look like I was standing up for her or my kids when it came to him. I was always raised to believe you don't fight with your husband in front of the children. If she would have seen me fighting with him, maybe she would have felt better, I think. But in the end of the day, my daughter suffered for years from anxiety and depression. She's doing much better now, but it's still there. My son struggles from alcoholism and drug addiction. Now, the dad was an alcoholic, so maybe there's a genetic bit in there, but I can't see how he couldn't be having a troubled life just by his background of what I put him through. So hence the guilt. Now, my relationship with my daughter is better. I mean, we went to couples counseling together. I did what I could to apologize for all the messes and stuff that I put her through, but the relationship is still tough. Like she has gotten very close with my sister, who has done so much to damage my life, but she refuses to stand up for me. She says she won't do it because I never stood up for her 25 years ago-ish with the ex-husband. And there we are at a stalemate. And my son, every time he runs into trouble, he wants to come to our house to kind of have a flop house for a few months. And this last time I did refuse because it's not good for Jasmine to see this. He now lost his vehicle. He's lost his driver's license. He is struggling. He keeps quitting his jobs. And for him to be stranded out at our place in the country is not good for me, for him, for Owen, and for Jasmine. So that's, and of course, just loads of guilt and all of that. Now, I know I did speak to my son around his wedding to his first wife and just let him know all the things that I had done wrong with him and how sore I was for giving him the life that he deserved so much better. And he did say at that point that he forgave me. And well, that felt okay, but we'll see. Maybe forgiveness is just a journey, as in not just one and done, that you have to just keep doing it over and over. I know with my daughter, she also said she forgave me, and she often posts wonderful things about me. But sometimes she says things that says it's not over yet. It's still going to be a lot of work. She has her work to go through. I have my work to go through, and I'm absolutely willing to do whatever is needed to get us through this, because I know that I absolutely failed them as a parent. And that leads us out to Jasmine. So then I'm now at 50. I was older than 50 when she came into our lives. And now I have a plugged in dad as a husband, and it's just a whole different kettle of fish for me. But I still feel guilty, like I'm not doing enough for her. I look at the instruments, I should be teaching her more. I should be putting her into more. I should be a better parent to her. And there's the other thing of one of the accusations from my oldest daughter when we were looking at adopting a 12 or 13-year-old child from it's a Wednesday's child program with the foster care. She became mad and gave me the silent treatment for a few weeks because she figured that I was replacing her. And my fear with Jasmine is I cannot treat her the same way as I treated Patrice, my eldest, because that would be bad for Jasmine now, and I can't treat them equally. I'm in a totally different life and a different relationship than I was when I was 25. And I'm hoping that Patrice does understand this, but how could she not see the difference between how I'm raising Jasmine and how she was raised? And I'm not sure how she's going to handle that. Maybe we'll just have a talk about that soon. I'll just bring it up to her and see how she feels about all of that. Now I'm going to read this last bit because it's a quote by Brene Brown. But here's what I'm learning. Guilt and shame may always be a part of my story, but they don't have to define me anymore. I can let go. I am 60. My life is different. I have to let these things go for my health, for the health of my family around me now. As Brene Brown says, shame corrodes the very part of us that believes we are capable of change. And so I have to let go of the shame, because how am I going to change then? And I refuse to let shame take away my hope of change. I can't go back and change the choices I made as a child, a mother, or a wife, but I can change the way I hold those stories inside me. I can stop letting guilt and shame tell me I am unworthy. Today I choose compassion. I choose to let go of the weight that keeps me frozen so I can keep moving forward, more open, more honest, and more free. Because in the end, shame loses its power the moment we speak it out loud. And that's why I share my story here with you. And so it begins, the season of letting go, when Mother Nature shows us all how it's done. Let go, free yourself, shake it off, drop it, give way for the new, create space for new thoughts, new ideas, new adventures, and new connections by shedding the dead weight you've been carrying around for so long. And whilst you're there, being reborn and renewed, let go of old anxieties too. Let go of any doubts, fears, or beliefs which no longer serve you well. Release bitterness or past hurts which feast on your beauty. Be brave, don't fear the nakedness as your leaves slip away. Mother Nature doesn't. Watch and learn.